Hello, hello, and welcome back to Keep the Lights here on Princeton Community Television. I'm Misha.
I'm Rachel.
And here with us today we have Mary Anne Haas, who is a 93-year young Princeton resident and artist, and we're going to be talking about her marvelous life and persona.
Well, I want to hear about your lives too, not just me, but I'll be glad to tell you from the start to the finish.
Of course.
So let's start with your birthday. You have a very interesting birthday. Want to tell?
Right. Yes, it's March 17th, and I was born in 1926, and my parents were very religious, Orthodox Jewish people, and I had 4 brothers, and I was the oldest. But for somehow, my mother was so proud that I was, born on St. Patrick's Day, and she had a Russian accent, because that's where she came from. She used to sing, "When Irish eyes are smiling," and I got such a kick out of that, so it was always fun. And especially, when I tell people that, they can't believe it, but I always have my birth certificate to show it's the truth.
So how long have you been in Princeton?
I've been in Princeton since 1996. And, but I was born in Seattle in 1926. And then when I was 17, I moved, out of there and went to live in New York. And so I was there for quite a while too. So I also, I met my husband in San Francisco after World War II. And we were married, going back a ways, and lived in Palo Alto, California. But he always wanted to go overseas. And I worked while he was going to school to get a degree. A job opened in Rome, Italy, to be the head of the American International School. We had 2 kids then, and we moved to Rome.
Wow.
And we lived in Rome for 8 years and loved it. But then it was tough with the people were suing the school. It was an American school. So when a job opened in Athens, Greece, he decided to go there. He thought that would be better. And it was, and we loved living in Athens, Greece. And actually, he died when we were living there, but I took over his job for a while till they could get somebody else. And then I was offered a job in Princeton. I'd been all over the world in wonderful places, but I never had been to Princeton, so that was quite something. And so that was in 1996, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. Exactly my words. So, do you really love languages and cultures? Did you learn a lot about the language and culture while you were abroad?
Did I what? I'm sorry.
Did you learn about the language and culture a lot while you were abroad?
Oh, always. I mean, I just loved, and when we lived in Rome, and we lived near the American International School, but I didn't feel like I was really living in Italy, and I found a place in Trastevere, and Trastevere is Italian for the Tiber River. And it was marvelous. It was charming. And he said, how can we move there? He said, it's so far from the school. I said, you'll manage, because you'll love it. And he did, and we did. We lived there and just loved it so much. It was always fun, because what happened was that what they would, there was a place across the street where people would go there, and they would get American cigarettes, and it wasn't that expensive. Otherwise, if you buy, I was a cigarette smoker then. If I got cigarettes that buy it, American cigarettes, it was a lot of money. And so I said, across the street they were selling contraband American cigarettes cheaper. I said, I'm going to go there. And he said, no, you're not. He said, you'll get arrested, and then I'll lose my job as the American director. Well, what happened is we were there one day, and a police car drove up, went there, and got their share of cigarettes for nothing. So I said, see, because even the cops, do things like that. Anyway, and then Athens I loved very much too, and it was a great place, and we traveled a lot of places from there. And but he did die just, before I moved. I mean, I stayed on for a little bit, but then I was offered a job by somebody who I had known, an American, and helped him get a job. And he said, he was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and he said, I'm applying for a job, he said, in a place, called Palo Alto, and he said, could you write a letter of recommendation for me? And I said, I'd be glad to. And I had my husband's title, so it was impressive. Anyway, he called me, said he got the job, and why don't I come and be his assistant? And that's how I ended up in Princeton. So you never know about life, huh?
So thinking of that, you lived a very long time. I mean, from the 20s till now, and so much, you've probably seen so much, like all the not all the world wars, World War II and Vietnam, and then there weren't even child labor laws, and women didn't even go to college, and so what was all that like?
Oh, another interest, isn't it funny how I remember things now. This was really interesting because, and my husband loved to travel new places and stuff. This is before we had the kids. And he always wanted to go to Vietnam. And this was just when the Americans went over and, took over. So actually, I think we were probably in Athens at that time. So we went to Vietnam. And which was really an exciting thing. And so he was talking to some of the people that were there in Vietnam, when we were there, and he said, how do you like the Americans? And I was a little embarrassed because my husband had no problem. He was even worse than me, but I think I'm more like him now. And so he said, how do you really feel about Americans to these people? He said, we love you because we won the war. Because actually they did. In those days, that was a long time ago. Anything else you want to know, or I think I've told you quite a bit, huh?
Well, there's so much to talk about. What do you like about Princeton? You've been here for a while now, so what is it that you love here?
When I first came, it was very conservative, and I was living in a place near where I worked. It was called International Schools, Services, and what I found that it was, there was a lot of prejudice at that time. They were conservative. They also had a feeling about blacks, Jews. It was hard. In fact, but I had always been accepting of all people, and I had met this I used to go to the Black Baptist Church because I liked their music. They still have it in Princeton, and I liked his voice, and we got to be friends, and he really wanted to be a minister, and he was going to the university, Princeton University, which was not easy because they didn't accept blacks that easy. But somehow I went there and I got him to get in. And at first he didn't even want to work for his degree. And I said, if you ever want to really go ahead in your life, you've got to work to the end of it. Anyway, he got his degree, and to this day, we're friendly. He's lives somewhere in Philadelphia, the head of a church, and, I know his mother and grandmother. We don't see each other that often anymore, but quite a bit. And so, he said that he was really so grateful to me because I had helped him. But at the same time, what I must say, Princeton is what I love about it. It's liberal, accepting, it's wonderful. The university, the art museum, I feel it's just a wonderful place to be in.
So I'd like to know about you have this beautiful fashion sense, you have like a beautiful persona, your whole style it's like a masterpiece. So I just wanted to know how you developed your whole style. It's really beautiful and unique and authentic.
Well, it's funny, but I had a lot of clothes, my daughter had given me and things, and I just sort of had them, and kept them. And now that I live in Princeton, I have an apartment facing the plaza, and I have, closets and stuff. And I started, I don't know what it was, is I haven't even really bought that many, but I mix and match them. And I have fun doing that. So that's, when people see me and they're so surprised, where do I get these things? But a lot of them is that just something I've decided would go well with that or this. And it was funny because I had my birthday, March 17th. I do that every year. But that year, it was about 2 years ago, I thought, oh dear, I really should wear something green. And somehow I went looking into the other closet, and there was this green dress that I hadn't even thought about. So that's what I wore at my birthday.
Well, that worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how about your hair color? When did you start dyeing your hair?
Well, I always, from the time I was a teenager, I came from a pretty, conservative family. I was the oldest, the only daughter, and this and that. But somehow I got away with, I used to, what was it? Peroxide and ammonia. I'd mix and do something with it. I don't know how great it all was, but I had always for years kind of, managed one way or the other. But now, living in Princeton, there's a great hairdresser. His name is Aziz. Do you know where that is or who he is or anything? But it's right on Witherspoon Street, across the street from where I live anyway. And so, and I always have liked things that are a bit, this is the newest. I think it's the wildest one I've had in quite a while. I had it done a few weeks ago. And so he did it. But he's great, and he doesn't charge me much because for what he's doing, because I had known him from another place, and then he was there, trying to get settled when he was going to run it, and I helped him a bit, and so he gives me a very decent price. So I'm a lucky woman.
So I'm always tempted to ask this of other adults. Where were you when JFK was assassinated? Because everyone remembers where they were.
Okay. Interesting question.
It is, and I'm afraid I can't remember, but I'll have to. Do you remember the year?
1960.
63.
Was it?
Apparently so.
Yeah.
1963.
Or 9/11.
Where was I in 1960? I better look all this up. I'll let you know, and then I'll find out. I'm sure I was very upset, but it was quite some time ago. 1963, you think it is?
We think so.
I'll check.
Okay. Well, you've lived a lot longer than we have. We're kind of beginners here. So what wisdom can you pass on to us, some advice, just like general advice or specific advice about life and how to go about it and what you found?
Well, I've always, even when I was younger, and especially these last years after my husband, died, and I was alone, and I never even, I was so busy starting my life and everything, and I never thought of, not that anybody was knocking at my door, but, I wasn't thinking of it. But I've always enjoyed it, even now, that even at my age, I am still able to help people so much because they'll stop me as I go walking down the street, and I know them, and if I know and people often will share things with me about needing help for one thing or another. I have found jobs for people. I've done a lot of that in the last years, and I get such gratification from it. And also, I believe we're all citizens in the world. I'm not just saying that, to be a goody-goody, but that's how I really feel, and it's so nice to know you can help people. And that's one thing why I am so, enamored with living in Princeton, because it was, when I first came, they were conservative. They are so different. You see people walking down the street. Some are black, some are Asian, some are white. Everyone, people are accepted as people. And that's what makes me love living here so much.
That's really beautiful. Aw, that makes me really appreciate Princeton.
Oh, you've both been wonderful. I've enjoyed this so much.
So, what do you plan to do tomorrow for the weekend?
Pardon?
What do you plan to do for the weekend? Tomorrow.
Yeah.
What do you plan on doing?
What am I planning on doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh, because today is Friday,
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Well, I'll have to, what I do? My memory isn't always that great, so I've got everything written down, in my calendar. I'm sure I've got something Saturday or Sunday, but even if I don't, I just find things to do, and I always can go to the museum and stuff, so I'm fine.
And I was just wondering this from earlier. You mentioned that you had 4 younger brothers.
Yeah, and I only have one brother living. He was 17 years younger than me.
Wow.
And he's still alive. And so he lives in Muncie, New York. So we're in touch, which is really nice,
But how was it growing up? Were you the only female?
Yeah.
You were the only sister? So how was it growing up with 4 younger brothers?
Well, the problem was difficult for me was that they were ultra-Orthodox Jews, and I was the only one of the whole family that, rebelled. Oh. It so happened that my husband happened to be from a Jewish background, but, because I, thought, it just so happened he was great, and we had a wonderful life together, but so the youngest one, he's still very religious, but we're in touch, and they all were. Even, my mother, that was funny. I visited her in the hospital when she was ill in New York, and she was 90 then. And I said, and there was an old saying you should live to 120. And I said, you'll live to 120. And she said, when you're 90, that's not long enough. And I always kind of got a kick out of that, you know, when I remembered that. She had such a great sense of humor. But anyway, no, life is good. And I think one of the things that I'm really happy about is that I really feel that I'm able to help people when I can. Even now, when maybe not when I was younger and stuff, but there's always something, and I feel you always feel like you're a better person when you're out there to help others. And also, hopefully, that more and more people are really not prejudiced. That's the one thing that, you know, for me, and I think we all do pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for spending some time with
I
us
loved
this evening.
it. I loved it.
Well,
Thank
us
you
too.
so much. And I hope we keep in touch.
Yeah.
Oh God, what did I do with my, because I have some cards that I can give you. Must be out there somewhere.
We'll exchange cards after this then. And I've always seen you around Princeton, but I never got the chance to like really talk to you or introduce myself. But sometimes, you know, when we're driving down the street, I'll be like,
Well, now we know each other.
Yes.
Yeah, we've known
Yeah.
each other.
I was like,
Yeah.
that's a friend of the Biermans.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
You stand out from a crowd, so of course I always remembered, you know. So I'd just like to say
Thank you.
thank you for coming and sharing your life stories.
And thank you for really being so receptive.
Oh, thank you.